So this was last year. I was in the Gap, and they had this. What do they call these? Infinity, a cowl, and they were $100. I was like, seriously? I can knit one of those, and so I did.
Let's see it on.
I will. It's really hot though. I'm not good at this part, but I don't care.
That's gorgeous. How long did that take you?
This is really fast. Could you use big giant needles?
I love it when you people say really fast.
You use giant. Where?
Giant needles.
Yes. Use giant, and you have brought something.
I have brought something. Now I only can knit forward and backwards, so I guess that's knitting and purling. So I basically make one thing. I have hundreds of them, although I did bring one of my little scarves too, which is crazy looking. Go ahead. I have them all over the place. It's pathetic. Every time my daughter and I started learning to knit together, which I write about in my piece, and she knits like mad. She knits hats. She knits socks. She's knitting socks for her boyfriend. I'm like, don't do that. That is the kiss of death. No, it's not knit for a man. It's happened twice. She's knitted twice for a man.
It's a curse, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a real curse.
It happened to my mother. She knit socks for a man, Argyle socks, and he said, I never received them.
Ooh, what a thing to say.
Kiss of death.
What a thing to say. How do you knit those? Did you do it in the round? And
no,
like, tell
I'm
us
confused by the round. Because I found that sometimes I'm knitting in the round and then I'm actually also knitting backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I think I'm making one pattern and then, I think I'm doing the stockinette pattern. Which if I was a yarn porn star, I think would be my name, stockinette.
I'd be kitchen.
But no, I just do them straight and then sew them up.
And you sew them up.
Yes, there's something very...
And you do them on like number 8 needles or something.
Yes. 8, a low number for me. I want to talk about writing because we have talked a lot about knitting, and you've been so encouraging to me about my knitting and have not mocked me too much about.
Not at all. I do not mock. I'm one of the worst knitters ever.
I'll turn them inside out for you later. You're gonna feel good about yourself. And so we've talked some about knitting. Now, did I come out to you at that Tin House Festival? I didn't knit in front of you, did I?
I've never seen you knit.
Okay, all right.
No, I have never seen you knit.
All right.
You've seen me knit.
Yes, lots. But did I say that I knit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I was talking to Izzy about it
Right.
first,
Okay.
and then it's sort of, yeah.
I was surprised to find out that so many writers knit.
It is crazy.
Why do you think there's this intersection between writing and knitting? Why do so many writers like to knit?
Well, I have a theory, which is that when you knit, this part isn't actually my theory. That's totally misleading, but I think this theory is why. When you knit, you can do other things with your brain. And so I think for a writer, even though you're knitting and not writing, you then can think about your project without sitting at your computer. Yeah, hands are going up. Yeah.
I mean, I felt like I had to stop writing because my hands were too busy knitting.
I actually was writing a book, and that's when I revisited knitting. I hadn't knitted for like over 30 years, and I needed something really creative, and I felt like while I was knitting, like my words were marinating.
Right, right.
And so it was really like that. I could write only so much, like 4 hours a day, and then I was like, I'm out of here.
Right.
And then I would just go to the knitting store, and I felt like it entertained the creative side of my brain. Not that writing isn't creative, but it's so visual. And I could get into a project that would then help me sort of just distill what I wanted to say.
Well, you know I had a deadline for something, and in fact, Emma, it was the World War I, the Pat Barker, yeah. And I'd been working on it, and I had finished it, but something was missing, and I didn't know what that thing was. And I was doing this visiting writer like 3 days or something in North Carolina, and it was like Wilmington, North Carolina, and this hotel was on the beach. I had this balcony, you know, just looking at the ocean. So I said, I think I'll go look at the ocean. And I felt sort of guilty, like I'm looking at the ocean. I'll knit while I look at the ocean. But while I was knitting, like 20 minutes later, I know how to fix what I need to fix, and I just put it down. Like the knitting to me helps you sort of work out your ideas.
you find that with the writing? I mean,
Yeah.
really, like, when you're stuck, do you go to knitting? Is it
Yes.
kind of like one door closes and you open up a portal over here and start doing something creative and it
Absolutely.
feeds that?
Yeah, and before I start a big project like a novel, I don't really write for a while. I just kind of want to think about stuff. And I do so much more knitting. I'm in that phase right now.
Mhm.
I mean, I am knitting like a crazy one right now because I'm not writing. But, so when I write, some of the knitting time goes down, diminishes somewhat, but they feed off each other, I think.
Do you think there's anything to the fact that it's so easy to see when you've made a mistake in knitting versus in writing? You know, in writing, like you're reading your piece, you're like, I don't know why this isn't working. I don't know where the bum sentences are anymore.
I don't know what this editor is talking about.
Right, but when you look at your knitting, you're like, oh boy, there's the problem there. And I, in the same way that I maniacally rewrite, I rip out all the time.
I do too. I rip out constantly. I like it, unknitting. It's one of my 10 things I've learned about knitting. And I think it's true, not only does it reveal itself, but you know you can fix it. Whereas when you're stuck with writing and something's not working, sometimes you wonder if it's worth fixing, if it can be fixed,
Right.
what's the solution? When you see a big hole in the middle of your scarf, you know the solution. You know, you rip it out, do it again.
Do you see any connection between the authors that wrote for the book and the kind of knitting that they do? I don't know how many of you have read the pieces. I mean, if you walk into a room, would you recognize
No.
Sam Chang's scarf?
No, it doesn't match up.
Really?
No.
None of them? Not me, right? I just realized it looks like I'm bandaged, right?
I love them. Are you kidding
Make
me? I
yourself.
love
Make
them.
yourself.
Yes, I want some. Well, there's one essay matches up pretty well with the writer's personality, I think. But I don't know if it matches up with the writing. Well, Anita Shreve. So her essay, she and her daughter get together for a weekend with the sole purpose of finishing unfinished projects. Now see, I would never do that. Like they just sit in baskets. Like they're not finished. They're done though, in their way. And she and her daughter spent an entire weekend discussing what went wrong here. And her personality is very orderly. Do you know what I mean? And it fits her that she would want everything done and tidy.
Yes.
You know, and I would not be writing this.
I did, thinking about being a knitter and being in this book made me think about gangs. Coming in here made me think about being in a gang.
Yeah, a good gang, a girl gang.
And with flashing needles. But as I was thinking about that, and then I was reading something, maybe a review of one of the books, and someone talked about how she had opened her own LYS. You know what that is? Little yarn store. So I was like, oh my God, there's all this slang, this yarn
I didn't
slang.
know
Dude,
that.
okay, so what's
L-Y-S.
local? Local. Oh, local, not little. See,
L-Y-S.
don't throw me out of the gang. I can tie a cherry stem with my tongue. I can do it. You'll be impressed. But what Anita is, those little pieces that like you're talking about, like you would never use those. Do you know what they're called? They're called toads. Trash object abandoned in disgust.
That is my
Great.
entire stash.
Yes, and that noise that we make when we're ripping out the stitches is called frog.
Frog and toads?
Frog and
Kidding
toad.
me.
Yep, there you go. Because
Now,
that's
where
like
did you
that
get
sound.
that? Is there like a knitting?
Dude, I did some research. I want to be part of this gang. I am ready.
Ripping out your knitting is called frogging because you're rivet.
Yep, exactly.
Oh my goodness, I never, I call it unknitting.
Isn't that great? And tinking is undoing the stitches by reversing.
Oh yeah, I do an awful lot of that.
And do you think it's tink because
No, it's knit backwards.
oh really?
It's the word
K-I-T,
backwards.
T-I-N-K.
Oh
And I
What's
speak
this?
backwards. And I can't, I mean, I keep straw cap. I talk backwards.
I cannot believe everyone knows these things. Now I feel like I'm not.
Okay, now, but I've got the best one for you and then I won't say
All
another.
right. No, tell me all. I want to
Okay.
be
When you go out and you buy lots of yarn, it's called SEX, Stash Enhancement Experience.
That's what sex is.
So when you say I'm going out for some sex, or I'm going to have sex, you're going to buy
That's
yarn.
what
Do you know about Sable?
Yeah.
Now what's sable?
Stash acquisition beyond life expectancy.
Oh, I thought that was Denver.
You will die before you finish knitting all your yarn.
Yes, wow. All right,
Yeah.
so see,
This is crazy. I mean, I thought I was excited enough just being able to know that, like, you know, TK,
Yeah.
T
No, no.
is knit two together.
And this
or
is a
whatever.
bofo. That's a bofo, a beautiful finished object.
It's my bofo.
Yeah.
heard that one.
You
got two bofos.
I got, yeah, 2
I didn't
bofos.
know any of this. I just
Well,
have, and I spend an awful lot of time in
see,
knitting stores,
see.
more than I probably.
Well, go in there and drop some Lingo. Who knows what you might get you? They might take you into a secret back room.
Yeah, like, you might know.
I
You
know. I'll just be able to get us in. Pretend to have some.
You know, it's
balls.
been kind of funny because since the book came out and word of it began to spread, I have 12 other writers who are like, you have to do another one. I have got to be
Who
in this
wants to
book.
be in it?
Tell me Margaret Atwood wants to be in it.
Is Margaret Atwood a knitter?
Oh, yeah.
You're kidding?
No.
Oh my God.
I will
You
put
need to
her
get
on the-
her on that one.
Totally.
That
I don't
would
know how I would
sell
ever
like
find
hotcakes.
Margaret Atwood, but I will do my
We
best.
can find Margaret.
I think
I
she's
would-
in a bomb shelter.
I did an
Alice
interview.
Alice
I did
Hoffman,
an interview with her for 10 House. We'll get her.
We'll get
Well, no,
her.
we're gonna use you as a contact.
Yeah, she's on Twitter. She's on Twitter everywhere.
Oh,
She's on
Twitter
Ravelry
all the time.
all
She
the
is,
time.
yeah.
She's on Ravelry, but nobody knows her name.
Really?
She's on Ravelry, so she's really a big knitter.
But nobody knows who she is. That's like the big secret.
Oh my, I am
Well,
totally
who is she
cracking
on
because I
Ravelry?
want
That's
Margaret
right.
Atwood.
knows,
Nobody
yeah.
knows.
That is cool. That would be great. What a score that would be. But Alice Hoffman.
Why don't you try advertising? Write to the people at Ravelry, ask if you can do it. You know, she lives around Toronto. Call
Yeah.
the publisher.
Yeah, I'm sure that she will. I'm relying on Elissa. She could get, you know, she could help me out.
Peggy.
You just gave me all that lingo.
That's right.
Does she go like Peggy?
Yeah.
Peggy.
Not to me.
Yes.
How about the sister art done with one needle rather than two has contributed to the language, lace curtain Irish?
Oh, really? Lace curtain Irish? I've never heard that.
That's crochet.
Oh, okay.
And it's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, it's so finely done.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
it's really lace.
Yeah,
it's
right,
absolutely
right.
beautiful.
I have tried lace knitting. That was the biggest disaster of my life. Too hot to wear my profile.
Do you think that your knitting, do you think that your knitting is, when you look back at books that you've written, can you imagine the pieces that you were working on at the time? Do you find any connection?
Oh, that
between-
connection, no.
Between what you're knitting and now?
No, I don't have that. No, because I just knit so much that it doesn't really line up.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like right now, I just learned how to make pom-poms, which I'm really excited about. So I'm knitting a lot of hats with pom-poms.
Aren't pom-poms?
I'm decorating my entire wedding with pom-poms.
Okay, my
Which is
9-year-old.
actually Rhode Island, so.
Oh, really? My 9-year-old is made 55. Could she bring you some? Because, you know, we don't know what to do with
Red
them.
and white, red and white, yeah, bring one over.
Oh, my gosh.
My mom lives in
hire this
Wakefield,
kid.
so.
Give her like $10 and she'll make
Annabelle?
5,000
Pom-poms by Annabelle.
Yeah, she has made,
Annabelle Hood.
she takes every stash, every scrap of yarn I have and makes a pom-pom. Yeah. I don't know what we're gonna do, though. She carries them around in a box. In fact, she came to New York with me 2 weeks ago, and she, you know, in the car, she made like 3 million pom-poms. And then we're getting out of the car, and I have a suitcase, and I have this, and I have that. And she gets out, and she's like, okay, take my pom-poms. And I'm like, no, we can't carry these around. These will stay in the car. I need my pom-poms.
There's a great new craft book, I think it's called Pom Pom by Sarah Goldschlapp, that's all pom pom projects.
Okay, I'm buying her that.
Yeah.
You
I
are
have that.
kidding me.
No, it's adorable.
No.
What's it called?
I think it's just called Pom Pom.
Do they? Yeah, that's such a great
Really?
store.
Yeah. I think, her name's Sarah Goldschlapp.
Okay, okay, I'm gonna remember that, 'cause that is too cool. That is great.
Does Annabelle knit? Have you taught Annabelle to
Yes,
knit?
she can knit. She's
Yes.
knit a scarf for Piggy, which is her very flat stuffed animal.
Yeah.
It's this long.
Does she sit beside you and do it, or is she
Lately.
patient?
She's so patient. With crafts, she sews.
She is adopted.
Yes. Adoption
Mama, I
addict,
do.
trust me.
That's right.
Yeah, no, she's a big sewer,
Mhm.
but yeah, no, she just learned to knit. Yes.
We knitted during the war as a part of the war effort.
I know.
Bundles for Britain.
Bundles. So what did you knit?
Socks.
Socks.
Everyone was for the servicemen.
That's right. I have to tell you an interesting story. My mom's 82. I've never seen that woman knit. I've never seen her do anything crafty. You know, she was a working mom and a, you know, and I was knitting. And my uncle died last week, her brother, and so I was spending a lot of time at her house and I was knitting because when I'm nervous, that calms me down. So I just sit there knitting these hats with the pom-poms. And she said, you know, I think I'm gonna start to knit. It just looks so, you look so calm, and it just, I like the way that whole thing looks. And I said, oh, Mom, I'll teach you. She said, teach me, I know how to knit. I said, you know how to knit. She said, I did it for the war. She said, give me that. Boom, boom, boom. She does like six rows, like nothing, like she had done it yesterday. She has not done it since then.
Now, my
Same
mother-in-law,
thing, socks.
my mother-in-law knits, she doesn't knit, she never takes her hand off the needle.
Oh, that's a what's it
No,
called?
what is that
Continental.
called?
Continental.
I am
It's
trying so hard to
faster.
learn that, and
Yeah.
every Thanksgiving, for like the past 5 or 6 years, we all knit at Thanksgiving, and
I love that.
Learn to crochet.
it is, except it's dangerous to have all these people sitting around with these needles, and,
They go such a great play.
it would be fabulous.
Yeah.
But she can knit, she just does this thing, she's talking and, doing a million other things while she does this, while the rest of us are all,
Well, it goes so
But
much
how do you learn
faster.
to do that? She said she learned in Berlin.
Yeah, it's,
I was,
You can do it?
Yeah, that's.
Is that what you're doing?
Well, I hold, when I have 2 colors, I hold one in each hand.
oh.
Don't worry about it.
Sorry.
Wait, you don't?
But mostly I knit with the yarn in my left hand.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, my
If you
friend
learn
does
the-
that.
Oh, look at you. Oh, you're,
It's faster. It's
and she's a good writer.
You'll be awkward at first, but
Yeah.
just keep doing it.
Yes, someone
Oh, I
taught
felt
me,
so
and I did it for
self-conscious.
like half an hour.
It's like,
and then
oh, I can't
I forgot.
I learned how to crochet. I learned
That's
how
what I
to crochet. I learned how to crochet first, and so the regular knitting didn't make any sense to me.
Really?
Yeah, because I couldn't take why would I take my hand off the yarn? And knit and crochet, you don't take your hand off the yarn.
I was saying to her, I find it very meditative to do it this way. Look, it's like Tai Chi. She's like,
Yeah, I had a friend who that she very nicely, when I was learning to knit, would go, it was winter, and we would drive to this knitting store like 40 minutes away, and I immediately decided I'm going to knit. My first decision was I'm going to knit 17 scarves for everybody I know, and this was in October, and I didn't. And then my next big proclamation was I'm going to knit hats with geese flying across them. You know those hats with the
oh,
geese?
God.
Oh, my geese were like going into each other, and they were like backwards and upside down. I couldn't do it. So I'm like working on these little tiny needles with the geese and this grid, and I mean I hardly knew how to knit, and I'm like confronted with this. And my friend had like number 16 needles and big fat yarn, and she knits continental. So she's like, boom, okay, I just knit a sweater. What are you working on? The geese. I'm still doing it week after week. She knit like her house was knit because you go so fast.
That's what she was saying. And I saw a book down at I guess it's Pearl in Soho that's called something like Gifts to Knit in an Hour or 2 hours. Like, oh, like you've just been invited to a party and you want to take a gift. But you forgot there's a baby shower. And they whipped it. I've tried a baby hat, and oh my God, you would never put this hat on a baby unless you wanted child services to come and take that child away from you. But that blows my pants.
One of my really fun things about in this book is that I just sort of, like Margaret Atwood, found two people who are knitters who write about knitting. So they weren't, writers, they are writers, but they're knitting writers. And I found them, I tracked them down through their books or whatever, and they contributed, and I was so excited. So one is Anne Shane, who's one half of Mason Dixon Knitting, right? And she's funny and great. She has her essay's terrific. And the other is Bernadette Murphy. She wrote the Zen of Knitting, right? So, and her essay is really good about learning how to accept failing at something. But it opens with her Irish aunt teaching her to knit continental. That's what made me think of it. But it was so great to have them in it. It's not just book writers.
Well, and I love the fact too that there are patterns in here.
Oh yeah, so actually there are 6, but the 5 main ones were done by, do you ever have like such a big girl crush? Like I have such a big girl crush on Helen Bingham, who designed these. Well, it's when you see a girl. And she did 5 original patterns. I thought I was going to have to convince her, but I just went in and I was like, I'm doing this. She's like, I'll do it. Do you want 5? I was like, yes, I want 5. And they're amazing. And I just did an event where she brought, the samples, and then she gave them away. She did quizzes and gave them away. It was so fun. And then I was like, I'm now going to read part 3 of my essay. I have nothing to give you. Helen is so beautiful. Let's just stare at Helen right now. Okay, so that was, there's those 5, but also one of the writers, Taylor Politis, he has one novel out called Rebel Wife, which is a really about post-Civil War widow, really fun book. Well, it's not fun. Everyone kind of dies of like a flu. So to me, that's fun. But
That's fun.
that's my idea of fun. He knits for his 4-pound Chihuahua Clovis.
I would do that.
And he designs and knits Clovis coats. And so he brought those too. Both of them brought things to show. I was like, that's why I brought this. I was like, I'm not going to be one up again.
Are there patterns for dogs?
Is it-
Because it's basically just
He's
a
got it
tube,
in there.
right? I can knit my sister's dog a dog sweater.
Oh, yes. Well, how big is
Just a
your
tube
dog?
of legs, right?
Yes.
You know, I just have to draw, yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah. This is big, but he does cables, and then I have to tell you, he does matching sweaters.
Oh.
Him and Clovis wear the same sweater. But anyway, so there's a dog sweater pattern in there too.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's fun. But I think, and I don't want to go on and on about knitting and forget the writing part, but I do think they have so many similarities. I find that when I'm doing both well, like you get in your groove, it's really the best way to pass time. I mean, there's nothing like looking up from your knitting, you have half a hat or something, and hours have passed, and you're so wonderful and good about yourself and accomplished and brilliant. And the same with writing. It's not always that way, nor is knitting, but you go into that place you write, and you look up and 2 hours, 4 hours have passed, and you've been in this other world, and it just really makes me happy that we have that opportunity to do that.
Now, as a knitter, you obviously count and follow a pattern and are really very
I
precise.
can only follow a
Are
pattern.
you the same way with writing? Do you set out with an outline? Do you say, I'm going to go from A to C and this is how I'm going to get there?
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about that. I also have
My
to
work is
follow a
done.
recipe. Yes. Thank you.
See, now, okay, I can't do it.
Really, like, I know, that's why I was asking you about these. I know you just figured out how to do this.
Yeah.
I could not figure out how to do anything. Not about knitting, but anything at all. I always need some kind of guide.
Uh-huh.
I remember when Sam was little, and I would give him a present that had to be put together. He would just put it, look at it, look at the pieces, and put it together. And meanwhile, I'm like, step 1, open the bags. Step 2, lay out your pieces. And he's like, doing it by just figuring it out.
Right, but even when you know where you're going in writing, and I don't know if this is true in knitting, but in writing, you know where you're going, but you're
You
open
should-
to
that's
surprise.
right, yeah.
Right, you're like, at any moment, something could change.
Right.
Have you ever started a knitting project and been in the middle of it and suddenly realized, this isn't what I want it to be. I feel like it's becoming something else.
No, I am so rigid. Isn't that terrible?
What about the rest of you? Do you
myself?
ever have that feeling? Yes?
You do?
Yeah.
Did you knit what you have on? You are kidding me. Look at this. I had to, I forgot to put this,
Wow.
I did it during a class where it was the only way that I could sit still. For-
I mean, how many of you have ADD? I can listen because of that.
But is it little squares that you knit and then you sewed them together?
No, they're knitted one to another.
I am like so impressed and like want to marry you. And take your sweater. For me.
Wow.
It was somebody who was doing an event last night at Cape Cod, and one of the contributors, Anne LeClaire, whose essay is, in fact, I'll tell you something about that essay in a second, but this woman, we were signing the books, and this woman came over, she had this beautiful scarf on, and there were like beads knit into the scarf, like pewter beads.
I saw you have one of those.
And Anne kept saying, that is a beautiful scarf. The woman's like, oh, they sell the yarn down the street. Oh yeah, but I don't really knit. I just wrote one of the essays, but I love the scarf. Like after the 3rd time, I'm like, give up. She's not handing that scarf. I'm so desperately, But I recorded this for Audible.com. I don't know if you've ever done this. It is hard, and I don't speak from the right place or something. So my throat was so sore and I was so crabby at the end. I'm so frail, So, but I was locked in this sound booth for 3 days, basically, with this 30-year-old hipster from Brooklyn, the sound engineer named Keith, and he was so nice. But, I thought this poor guy, he gets on the knitting book. I mean, I was just like, I felt so bad for him.
Oh, yeah,
But he was so nice.
Stuck in a booth with you.
And like he kept reminding, not intentionally, but I realized like I'm really middle-aged and I have a lot of weird things, because every now and then he'd say, could you read that again? A little stomach noise. I'd be like, oh my God. essay, he said, we have to stop, I have to take a moment. He was crying. 2 of the essays, so it was Emma Claire's, which was about infertility and adopting a baby. And I mean, he was actually like, and then Joyce Maynard's, about her mother being able to do anything except live, beat cancer. And so the end, the last paragraph is just a killer. And those 2, he was crying. Isn't that amazing? At the end of the 3 days, I hugged him. I'm like, oh, Keith, thank you. I said, I know you pulled the short straw. He said, well, frankly, I thought I had. I was like, he said, I've learned so much from these essays. And he said, and not about moving. But
Well,
he loved it.
I was happy to see, I mean, there are a lot more men knitting now.
Yeah, I got 3 in here. There's Taylor, who I mentioned about with the Chihuahua, John Dufresne, and Andre Dubusse III. I'm going to forget, Andre. And his was funny because I was teaching with him, and I was just starting to put together the anthology, and he put his chin on my shoulder, and he's like, yeah, I can't really do a New England accent. I'm going to try this. He's got a very big Boston accent. And he said, yeah, you get your knitting and your purling there. You're doing a little knit 2, purl 2 rib. And I was like, how do you know? Yes, you knit. He said, yes. I said, you want to be in an anthology? And he's like, yeah, I knit a scarf once for my aunt. I love his. I love his. Yeah, it was amazing.
Now, have you ever given anyone something that you've knit and felt perhaps afterwards that maybe they weren't thrilled about it?
All the
I know
time.
that
They don't.
Samantha Chang
Hers is
writes a
funny.
very funny piece about that.
Yeah, all the time. They don't want this stuff. I want to tell you something. I knit my cousin slippers. They're called pocketbook slippers. It is the cutest pattern. I
Are you
gave them
supposed
to
to
her.
keep them in your pocket?
No, they look like a little pocketbook. They have they're like Mary Jane's. So they've got, it's like a little handle. Does anyone remember? It's the cutest. I got it on Ravelry. I gave them to her 3 Christmases ago. She's like, oh, she puts them on. These are great. Do you know where they are? They are on my coffee table. 3 years. Shows how much I clean my coffee table.
She left them?
Yeah.
Did she call you and ask for them back?
No.
Ask her how she's enjoying the slippers.
She sits there and eats food on my coffee table next to the slippers and doesn't go, oh my, those beautiful pocketbook slippers. No, she hated them. There they sit.
You bring them out when she comes over?
No, I leave them there. They become decorative. They're now the sculpture, the knitted sculpture, which, by the way, my friend Mary knits objects, and I'm kind of getting an itch to do it. She has knit gorgeous pears. She has knit Christmas ornaments that look like those old-fashioned lights. Oh, yes. She knits objects, but I got an email from her recently. She said, I'm really depressed because we're not coming east for Thanksgiving. She's in Santa Fe. I'm like, what do you have to be depressed about? She's in Santa Fe. She said, it's the first Christmas, we won't be there, blah, blah, you don't need to hear her troubles. But she said, but then my catalog came where they always have the Christmas thing, like the pears and the Christmas lights. She says, and this year it's pine cones, and I'm not doing pine cones. So I didn't know what was wrong with that, if she was just kind of sad and pine cones.
would be groovy.
I thought they'd be kind of cute. But
And then you could stuff them with pine needles.
and have them as,
You sleep with them.
what are those things that you put in your drawer?
Sachets.
Sachets, thank you. They could be that, pine cone sachets. Yeah. So she knits objects, and so to make her feel better, I happened to get this email about a class at Loop in Philadelphia to learn how to knit little gnomes. Did you see that? And I said, maybe you'd feel better if you learned this.
I've
Go to
knit a couple of
Philadelphia.
those, they're fun.
What's that?
I've knit a couple of those, they're fun.
They are so cute.
Yeah, the arms are the most fun part because you just knit like a 3 thing of an I-cord that's like this long, and then you just pull it through the entire gnome. It's so cool.
Now, do they have faces?
Yeah, you kind of make little eyes for them.
I love it.
They're pretty.
It's a
little.
book. There's a book about it.
She also the woman that does the moshi moshi. She also makes,
Yeah, moshi moshi, right.
She also makes kits. So I had a kit, so you can get like 3 gnomes out of a kit.
You know everything. This has given me so much information.
Is it amigurumi or is it knitting?
No, it's knitting.
Oh.
It's knitting, yeah. I want to go take the class. It's like in December. The woman's teaching it, the moshi moshi.
She apparently is really nice from what I hear.
She's
adorable.
Yeah, she's really. Everybody knows her.
I'm
Frogs and sex.
learning on YouTube.
Yeah,
How many of you have learned from YouTube? Any of
cables.
you
That's how I learned
Okay.
cables.
Oh, I
I
like
know.
your gloves.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, man. All right, that's what I learned to do. Did you make those?
Yeah.
Thumbs are hard, I've done them, they're hard, I know. I like the thumb hole.
When you find out, when people oftentimes find out that someone else is a writer, I think sometimes it's a little bit like you show each other your scars, like you tell each other something. Do you find that when you meet people and you find out that you're both knitters, that you instantly feel like you share something?
Oh, yeah, don't you? Absolutely.
Kind of like a secret language.
Frog, ribbit. That was good. I liked that. Yeah. Well, how many people here knit and write both? I'm just curious.
How many of you write poetry? Oh, interesting. I thought that that would be, I was surprised that,
Oh, Eleanor Littman wrote a poem.
yeah, she wrote a poem, but there aren't a lot of poets
So
in
she's
that.
not really a poet.
Because it seems sort of like a poet thing to do, maybe.
I'm trying to think if I know any poets who knit, and I'm coming up with zero.
No clue. Well, I feel better now. I feel even more relaxed now.
Yeah. I don't have to write poetry, because then I'd have to give up knitting.
You don't have a long enough attention span.
Yeah, they do short rows hollow. Yes.
Have you heard that knitting was invented by Arab seamen?
I've heard that it was by seamen, but I didn't hear Arab seamen, but
That's what someone told me that one.
now who wrote, it was Alison
history.
Lurie did
Yeah.
the history of knitting, so she has a lot about paintings, ancient Egypt,
What were they knitting with? What were they using?
the stuff they
I
make
don't
nets
know.
with. Yeah.
Someone just told me that
Oh,
when I
really?
was knitting.
The stuff they make nets with, you know.
Right.
So it's not really yarn, but it's
Cecil?
Hemp, flax.
hemp. Yeah.
That would make sense.
Once I saw in a yarn store in Washington State, yarn made from seaweed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Cecil.
I have a tank top out of that, it's great.
It smelled so good.
Really?
It's delightful.
Oh, it was
It's
so
so
you
soft.
would never know it was seaweed, but
And
it
it's
was so
strawberry.
pliable. Well,
Oh, those were, yes.
The smell, I don't know if I was making that, it smelled.
No, I remember going to, being at a county fair, there was a woman who had Angora sheep, and she was literally like spinning the wool off the sheep as it was standing there.
Oh my.
It was a sheep, although they do have the rabbits.
Oh,
too.
those rabbits freak me out. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. If you
I
own one,
love
God
those
bless you.
rabbits.
But they are this big. I was at a knitting store in Maine just the other night, doing an event. And this woman, I noticed this big pile of hair, the yarn, under her seat. And I thought, now, how is that going to attach to the blue thing? She's saying this
Right.
big white thing. All of a sudden, that thing jumped out. I was it's the yarn store mascot. It is this big, white, with pink eyes. And it's named Fluffernutter. Just like a cat. I like cats, but you know how cats know when you don't like them? That rabbit was all over me. Like I was just like a chicken, a pile of yarn. I don't know. All over me, and I was like, oh, she's so cute. And then I'd recross my legs so the other side. Oh, there he is again. You know, Fluffernutter, my friend. I thought it was creepy. I didn't. This big,
But weren't the yarn store people nice?
so nice.
There's one thing I've also noticed is I make, a part of the reason I like knitting is because I lose things, so I can replace them, like just
Yeah,
make new
yeah.
ones. It's the same reason that I make jewelry, so I make a lot of jewelry. And I've noticed there's a huge difference between the people that work in bead stores or in, places where you buy wire and
Yeah.
all that stuff, and the people that work in knitting stores. You go into a knitting store and they're like, hello, welcome, come sit down. You're gonna rub your feet. People in bead stores are cranky.
Oh, they
Have
are.
you if you go into beading stores, they're cranky, right?
Well, they're
It's
working
like,
with
what's
beads.
with
It's
that
like being a
puss?
dentist.
That's what it is, like hissy.
Yeah. Well, they're doing just that small, careful work makes people very proud.
Oh, man, that's my issue, man. That's my problem.
Oh, time. I'm just getting like this. Probably she's been up there a long time. I haven't looked at you. Guys, thank
What
you
is it-
so
what-
much.
do you have a last question?
Yeah. Anything else?
Or we can keep talking, because we're gonna go over there for some refreshments, I heard.
Yeah. Oh, really?
That's what they said.
More. It is the perfect night.
I want to see what everybody's working on.
I know. I know. Look at the sparkle scarf she has on. That is really nice.
Did you do that too?
They knit everything.
super easy. The sparkle is just a thread with sequins on it.
That you kind of, so you
You know,
knit
the
it.
people always, it's super easy. It's super easy. It's just do this and that and backwards.
And now, did you knit your
I did.
thing?
What?
What's your name?
Linnea.
Linnea.
Yeah, it's one of these. Actually, I'm knitting another one right now. It's like a wrap.
And she
sweater.
cooks. She makes duck.
Wait, Linnea, how hard is that? It's not hard at all. That's what people always say. That is hard.
There was a little challenging moment when I don't cast on while drunk, but it's just it is a lot of stockinette rows and then reverse stockinette, but there's some spiciness to it.
Thank you for admitting that, because knitters never admit that. They're like, no, you can do it. I have something,
This is like it. I'm making another one, and this is sort of how you knit in from. You start with a circle and come in, and then knit.
I'm terrified right now. I don't know about you. Impressed and terrified.
I didn't know this when she was my student. I found out later.
Oh, you were her student? Yeah,
Well,
no, not knitting.
no, not kidding.
That is amazing. I can't sew like the sleeves on. I made one sweater, and then I was like, I'm not doing this again.
They have to do that for you. They have finishing. I like to do it, but they do have finishing services at various yarn stores.
Does Nitty City?
Finishing services. That sounds great. It's like a book doctor.
Yeah.
You walk in and you say, I need the finish.
Will they take apart the bad finishing you've done and refinish? Because I love the sweater, but it's so bumpy and, there's a hole where I sewed it, and it's not good. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so impressed with you.
Yeah, really.
But you've been very kind.
Did you make that hat?
In this crowd, you can say, yes, I did. And these shoes.
Well, at least maybe the socks.
Thank you for having
Thank you,
me.
sweetie, thank you so much for being
It's
in this.
fun to
You
be
know
here.
how happy I am.
And thank all of you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.